Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. Senator, thank you so much for coming on with me. Such a busy day. I know you have a lot of very fond memories of Senator Feinstein.
I do, Dana, and thank you so much for giving her the respect, the honor that she's due. Senator Feinstein was someone who was first elected to the Senate when I was a law student, and I followed the arc of her service and of her leadership here closely because I had the chance to meet her when she was just in her first year as a U.S. Senator. I never imagined I'd get to serve alongside her on both the Appropriations Committee and the Judiciary Committee. But when I got here 13 years ago, Senator Feinstein was in fine form. She was gracious and dignified. She was proper. She was always prepared. But she was also fierce, determined, and incredibly capable. As you've heard several of my colleagues say on the floor this morning, she engaged in important, even tectonic fights, defending the prerogatives of the Senate against the CIA in the fight over torture, standing up for the interests of her home state of California on a wide range of interests, and fighting for women, being someone who worked hard to pass the Violence Against Women Act, someone who was not just a trailblazer, but a door opener for so many others who followed behind her. Senator Patty Murray, who's now the President pro tem of the Senate, was also elected with her in the so-called Year of the Woman back in 1992. And it's a reminder of just what a transformation she helped bring to this body, to the Senate, and to our country. The last thing I'll mention is that she was very close to my predecessor, then Senator Joe Biden. He was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, worked hard to welcome her and recruit her onto the Judiciary Committee. And Senator Feinstein shared with me a number of privately funny stories about her service with Chairman Biden, the things they agreed on, the things they disagreed on. She had a real soft spot for him, and she was the sort of person who had no enemies in the Senate, even if folks disagreed with her as a matter of policy. I was just on the floor talking to some of the most senior and seasoned Republican senators. Every single one of them had a story about her graciousness, her thoughtfulness, her generosity, hosting them in her home, telling jokes with them on the floor of the Senate, even as she fought fiercely for the things she believed in.
Yeah, I mean, it's such all of the points that you just made are so important to remember as part of Senator Feinstein's legacy. But that last one, you know, people looking from the outside in think that that's a time gone by to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. I know that does still exist. It just doesn't really necessarily get as much of a spotlight as maybe it should. One of the things you mentioned, Senator, was the fact that she fought very hard to get the intelligence report about the enhanced interrogation, the torture report, released. She fought her own Democratic president, Barack Obama, and she was chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. They were not happy about it, but she did it. She felt it was important for transparency for the American people.
Senator Feinstein believed deeply in democracy. She believed in the importance of openness, of our citizens, our constituents knowing what's happening. And that's a tough position to take as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee in a deep disagreement with the intelligence community over the conduct of a particular aspect of the war in Iraq and of the war on terror. And it had significant consequences. I think that was, in some ways, among her finest moments here in the Senate, showing toughness and persistence in fighting for the prerogatives of the Senate. She also is largely responsible for passing the assault weapons ban, something that was unthinkable when she came here, but because of her own personal experience with the tragedy of the assassination of Harvey Milk, that catapulted her to a position of leadership as mayor of San Francisco. She spoke movingly and repeatedly. It was one of the very first things she talked to me about when I became a senator, in a very gracious but forceful way, soliciting me to join as a co-sponsor of her attempt to reenact it, something she never backed off from, was very engaged in and very purposeful about.
Senator Coons, I know you two have to get to the floor for votes. Really appreciate you coming on and talking about your friend, Senator Feinstein.
Thank you.
Thank you. And up next, Dianne Feinstein.